3 sinister suburban secrets exposed, 3 spine-chilling true horror tales that will haunt you forever. On a tranquil evening in Ohio, Sarah's heart raced as shadows stretched across the floor of her living room. She'd settled into her routine after the disappearance of her husband, seeking comfort in the perfection of her suburban life. But whispers threaded through the air, and her once safe haven began to feel like a meticulously painted coffin. Every house in her neighborhood gleamed clean, yet beneath them, something sinister lurked, wrapping around her family like a malevolent fog. Mr. Jennings was the first sign of trouble. He had a disarming smile, but his eyes lingered too long during casual exchanges. "Good afternoon, Sarah." He called from his perfectly manicured lawn, and she couldn't shake the feeling that he knew far too much about her life. The way his gaze seemed to analyze her morning routine with amusement, how he appeared at the exact moment she left for work, it sent chills down her spine. One night, while she clutched her pen furiously, drowning in paperwork, her phone buzzed with urgency. Emma's voice was a trembling whisper, "Mom, there's someone in the backyard." Panic ignited in Sarah's chest. Surely, it was just her imagination, but the panic surged as she flicked on the backyard light, revealing the stillness that only amplified her dread. The wind rustled the leaves like a hushed warning. Something wasn't right. Dismissing the police's assurance about neighborhood safety, fear tightened its grip on Sarah. She buried herself in local news, hunting for details that could justify her growing suspicion. A pattern emerged. Missing children linked disturbingly close to her picture-perfect community. She peered out at Mr. Jennings, who waved casually while she felt her heart pounding against her ribs. This comfortable little prison seemed to smother her. Paranoia whispered dark thoughts, and each sincere smile looked sharp enough to cut. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. A storm raged that night, and it felt like nature itself was crying out. The thunder roared, drowning out her frantic heart, and Sarah gathered her courage. She couldn't shake this feeling anymore. Gathering her nerves, she crept to Mr. Jennings' house, rain soaking her clothes as she approached the darkened door. There it was, an ominous creak as she opened it. The basement beckoned with a terrifying whisper. Her heart raced as she fumbled through the darkness, and dread washed over her. Hidden behind descending stairs was a door, rusted and menacing. She pushed it open, only to gasp at what lay before her. Walls adorned with photographs of children. Happy faces, their innocence frozen in time. Each smiling child with a date attached and note scribbled beside them, documenting lives cut short. Her skin crawled as dread seeped into her bones. She had been walking too close to the monster. Caught in a web, the realization crashed over her like a tidal wave. Mr. Jennings wasn't just the friendly neighbor. He was the very embodiment of the fear that had slithered into her peaceful life. Just as she began piecing together the horrifying reality, the door slammed shut behind her, sealing her fate. "I've been waiting for you, Sarah," Mr. Jennings said, his voice smooth as silk and just as deadly. "You don't understand how much safer it is here." In that instant, Sarah felt the walls of her suburban paradise close in around her like a noose. Could she escape before the monster found a way to make her vanish too? The smell of damp earth filled the air, mingling with Sarah's rising panic. The darkness wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket, and the realization of her precarious situation slammed into her chest, squeezing the breath from her lungs. With trembling hands, she fumbled behind her, seeking the massive door she had just slipped through. It was solid and unyielding, a cruel reminder of her entrapment. "Safe," Mr. Jennings repeated, an unsettling smile plastered across his face, revealing an unsettling truth. "You'll learn to appreciate our little community, like everyone else." His gaze settled on her as if she were a prized possession that he had only just acquired. Sarah shuddered, the urge to scream bubbling just below the surface. "Let me out," she choked out, her voice barely a whisper in the oppressive silence. But Jennings only chuckled lightly, the sound echoing in the confined space like a cruel taunt. "Not yet, dear Sarah. You see, this basement has grown quite comfortable, it has become home to many. You'll find out soon enough." In that moment, the entire space pulsed with a sickening energy. Sarah's heart thundered, thunder cracking above her like the sound of chains clanging together. She took a step back, scanning the walls filled with haunting faces frozen in time. Each child gazed back eyes wide, smiles painted like the monsters they had become. Her stomach twisted at the thought. How could something so innocent turn into such a horror? Gathering her courage, she turned, spotting a flicker of light seeping beneath a door at the far end of the basement. Hope ignited for an instant a chance at escape. She crept closer, the sound of her own breath loud against the backdrop of silence. As she edged toward it, something cold pressed against her ankle. She jolted back, her heart racing. A rusted chain lay coiled on the floor, remnants of past horrors mixed into the darkness. "Don't bother with the door," Mr. Jennings crooned from behind her. "It's not for you." Suddenly, her eyes caught sight of a small window high above, a glimmer of freedom. It looked too far to reach, but the choice was becoming clear. Stay in a place designed for nightmares or find a way out. She needed a chance to see Emma again, to protect her from whatever evil lurked in the town. Pushing through her panic, she turned her back to Jennings, now focused on the window. The chains rattled as she pulled at the wooden desk beneath it, her heart racing with every creak. She climbed up, her hands shaking, fingers straining against the splintered wood until she felt the edge of the window a shimmer of hope amidst dark reality. Before she could take a breath to lift it, a hand clasped around her wrist with enough force to make her gasp. The warmth of his grip turned ice cold as he pulled her away. "I told you, Sarah. It's better to stay." The smile on his face was nothing short of grotesque. Darkness suffocated her as she struggled against his grip. Was this how it all ended? Trapped inside a smiling monster's lair? She felt the weight of her surroundings crushing down her spirit, but in the back of her mind, she remembered the stories she had read about bravery, about mothers who defied all odds for their children. A surge of energy flooded her veins, the fight igniting her resolve. With a wild scream, she wrenched her arm free and dashed toward the farthest wall, pushing against the door, the eerie familiarity of the basement now a barrier between her and freedom. Would the monster catch her before she could escape? "Leave while you still can, before the night takes you too," she shouted back at him, her own voice filling her with terrifying courage. As she slammed her shoulder against the door, it shook but stood firm. Desperation clawed at her throat. Behind her, the laughter bubbled up from Jennings, deep and echoing as the facade of civility cracked to show the monster within. But before she could muster the strength for another assault, she heard a faint sound cutting through the oppressive air, a familiar voice calling from the other side. "Mom? Is that you?" Emma's voice drifted like a beacon of light in her darkness. The call struck her heart like a blade, igniting a primal instinct to get back to her child. With eyes wide and breath stolen, Sarah pressed her ear against the door, the chill of dread hanging thick. Would she fight her way out or succumb to the terrible unknown lurking behind her? But it wasn't just Mr. Jennings in the room. The air grew heavier. Shadows danced and seemed to whisper, beckoning Sarah deeper into the nightmare that was threatening to swallow her whole. As her pulse raced, a question loomed larger than ever: what sinister truths lay beyond the door, waiting for her choice? The air thickened, turning suffocating, as Sarah stood frozen before the heavy door. Her heart thudded loudly against her ribcage, each beat echoing the urgency of Emma's call. "Mom? Please." The desperation in her daughter's voice penetrated the cocoon of dread surrounding her. It was a tether binding her will to survive. She pressed against the door, feeling the grain of the wood beneath her fingertips. "Emma." I'm here. Panic mingled with hope, and for a fleeting moment, she believed she could bridge the distance between them. Fists pounded against the door in response, relentless and harsh. Mom! Another voice joined the fray, a child's voice, faint but filled with terror. Let us out. Sarah gasped, a surge of cold dread sweeping over her. Who were they? What was happening behind this barrier? She barely heard Jennings creep closer, the soft click of his shoes against the concrete floor marking his steady approach. What a shame, he purred, leaning threateningly over her shoulder. They're too young to understand. It's better down here, really safe from the real horrors of the world. His breath was foul, like rotting meat, and Sarah recoiled. No! She cried out, shaking herself free from his looming shadow. If staying was not an option, then she needed to find a way to break this door down. With renewed determination, she focused her energy on the door's heavy frame, her shoulder roll bolstered by adrenaline. Get away from my daughter. The door bucked and rattled, she could feel the hinges protesting her attack, but it held firm. Stop this childish game. Jennings sneered, stepping forward. Shadows danced around him, and a chill swept across the room. He raised a hand, and her blood ran cold as she saw a flicker of movement behind him, a dark figure skittering just out of sight. Fear surged, igniting her fight-or-flight instinct to its maximum. She lunged again, throwing her weight one more time against the door. A crack sounded, a hairline fracture, but still, it stood resolute. She could feel time gnawing away at her. Her daughter was out there, and the shadows were closing in. Help! Mom, please! The chorus of voices clamored from the other side, young, terrified cries becoming a haunting melody in the thick air. Every syllable clawed at her heart, stoking her fury. Like a flash, the recollection of the rusted chains seized her mind once more. Those chains, they were remnants of someone else's horror. What had they been bound to? The weight of dread added to her urgency as she twisted her body away from Jennings, surveying the room, desperate for anything, a loose board or a tool to turn the tide of this suffocating dread. Let the children go! She screamed, eyes landing on a shard of glass embedded in the floor. Relief surged through her, adrenaline coursing, as she reached for it with a trembling hand, her breath quickening. A sharp chuckle echoed from Jennings, pushing her resolve further. They're home, Sarah. And soon, you will be too. You just need to learn to embrace it. His voice faded into the shadows, and the air grew thick with something foreboding, something that made her skin crawl. Time's running out, he whispered. She could almost hear the smirk lurking just outside her vision, waiting for the moment she faltered. With the glass shard clutched tightly in her hand, Sarah turned back to the door. If you want your daughter, you have to go through me. She shrieked, desperation and defiance fueling her words, but as she prepared to slash at the door, a single thought paralyzed her. What if Emma was on the other side, with those other children? What if they'd all been claimed by Jennings' twisted world? The door groaned in protest as she positioned herself to strike. Would she shatter her world to save her own child? The weight of the decision pressed heavily on her, dragging her down toward despair, but then silence fell. The voices stopped. The darkness seemed to pulse with anticipation. As she stood frozen, sensing eyes upon her, a deep, chilling whisper slipped through the cracks. Are you ready to join us, Sarah? Suddenly, the door shook violently. She stumbled back, her heart thundering in her chest as a wave of panic washed over her. Mom, Emma's voice cut through the silence, now trembling with fear. The ground beneath her shifted. The shadows darkened around her. Time felt like a chain, tightening cruelly as she weighed her last choice. As the door quivered once more, a new voice, raspy and alluring, slithered into her mind. Choose or be chosen. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. In that moment of decision, a horrifying truth descended. What awaited her could be far worse than the unknown. This place had a mind of its own. What would she do next? And who or what would await her on the other side? The glass shard glinted in the dim light, a beacon of hope and a weapon of desperation in her trembling hand. Sarah's heart raced as she prepared to plunge the shard into the door. The fleeting thought of Emma on the other side kept her grounded, battling against the encroaching darkness that sought to engulf her. "Just a little more," she whispered, pushing against the door with all her strength. Sweat dripped from her forehead, mingling with the cold air around her. Jennings' laughter slid through the shadows, oily and unsettling. "You think you can save them?" he taunted, stepping closer. "You're too late. They're already mine. Just look at them." A sharp intake of breath fell from her lips as she swung the shard downward, but the moment she connected with the wood, a grim echo reverberated through the room. The force of her strike sent a shudder through her arm, and a new crack split along the door, but it remained steadfast. "Help! Mom! Please!" Emma's voice pierced the chilling atmosphere, desperation clawing through the timbre of her plea. The rising panic in Sarah's chest seemed loud enough to drown out the shadows, igniting a feral instinct within her. "Stay back!" she shouted, hoping to drown out Jennings' derision. She could feel the darkness gathering, an intelligence lurking just out of reach. "What will you do, Sarah? Will you unleash your fury, your fear? The children are already entwined in this darkness. You think you can pry them away?" The whispers danced in her ears, scratching at her resolve. She knew it was a game, a play for her sanity, but there was nothing whimsical about a mother's instinct. She flexed her hands, the shard digging painfully into her palm, and closed her eyes to focus. "Breathe," she instructed herself. The air thickened, stifling her thoughts. Taking one last breath, she focused on the voices. Her daughter's voice, filled with a vibrant urgency, cut through the droll laughter. "Emma! I'm coming!" With a furious scream, she thrust the shard into the door with every ounce of power she had left. Cracks spidered outwards like veins, and dust cascaded down from the edges. Just then, the door shuddered, a low groan reverberating through the shadows, shaking the air around her. "Stop this!" Jennings' voice was a visceral hiss now. The way he lunged towards her sent chills racing down her spine, but she didn't falter. She gripped the shard tighter, leaning into the door as splinters and fragments flew away in response to her ferocity. Suddenly, a force seemed to push back against her, a rippling wave of energy that momentarily made her legs buckle. The shadows began to morph and stir, figures flitting just out of her line of sight. The air carried a rancid flavor, like decaying leaves beneath a heavy mist. Her focus narrowed, and in an act of primal defiance, she sunk the shard deep into the wood, twisting it violently. "Emma! Can you hear me?" she shouted, the strength of her voice contrasting sharply with the horror lurking around her. A deafening silence gripped the room, forcing Sarah to breathe through the tightening of fear that gripped her throat. And then a scream. A raw, tortured wail that pierced through the air, one that didn't belong to any child she knew. It resounded from the other side of the door, a sound so gut-wrenching it sent her heart plummeting into the pit of her stomach. "No!" she screamed, the glass shard slipping from her grasp and clattering to the floor. "Get away from them!" But the door began to splinter even more, and a luminous crack ran daintily through its center. For a fleeting moment, she saw silhouettes shifting, frantic shapes against the now illuminated doorway. "Mommy, please," a small voice whimpered, and Sarah staggered back, her breath caught in her throat. The door creaked and moaned, the final moment between the known and the unknown collapsing as the silhouettes began to press forward. One last push would break through the darkness, she realized. But at what cost? As the door trembled ominously and the shadows loomed ever closer, she was left with a chilling choice. Would she open it and risk everything, including her own soul, or would she turn away from the darkness forever? "Choose," the voice whispered one final time, crawling under her skin. Or be chosen. As the last shards of her determination began to crumble with the door, Sarah took a deep breath, ready to face whatever horror awaited her beyond the threshold. And then, without warning, the door burst open, unleashing a gust of frigid air that reeked of despair and dread. What lay beyond that disintegrating frame? What truth awaited Sarah in the chilling depths of that monstrous realm? Cold air slammed into Sarah like a wall, stealing her breath. She stumbled forward, heart hammering in her chest as she stepped into the unknown. Her eyes widened, adjusting to the eerie light that cast grotesque shadows on the walls. "Emma!" she cried out, desperation fueling her stride. The room was dark, the corners swallowing the feeble light. Objects that once belonged to her daughter cluttered the ground, twisted dolls and shattered toys strewn like fallen soldiers. And then she saw them. Her heart nearly stopped. Emma stood there, root-like and shivering, surrounded by a swirling fog that snaked around her feet. The girl's gaze was vacant, eyes wide yet unseeing, as if she were trapped in a nightmare from which she could not wake. "Emma! It's me, Mommy." Sarah reached out, but the air throbbed, an unseen barrier pushing her back. Her fingers sizzled in the dreadful energy, and she recoiled, panic clawing up her throat. Jennings' laughter echoed around her, a malicious chorus that dripped with eeriness. "They can't hear you, Sarah. They're part of the darkness now." The shadows flickered, coiling around Emma, whispering in a language Sarah couldn't understand. With each sinister twist, her daughter's form seemed to distort, a marionette on strings of blackness, held captive by Jennings' twisted power. "No!" Sarah screamed, instinctively stepping forward. "I'll get you out, Emma. I promise." Just then, the temperature plummeted, an unnatural chill wrapping around Sarah like icy fingers. She felt as if she were being pulled down, dragged into the very fabric of the parade of misery trailing from those grotesque shadows. Mommy, Emma's voice flickered like a candle, filled with desperation. "I'm scared, hold on." Sarah shouted, every inch of her aching as she fought the cold. Heart racing, she surged forward again, adrenaline pushing her through the oppressive air. With every step, shadows clawed at her, dragging her back, whispering doubts that willed her to turn away. "Give in, Sarah," Jennings crooned, his presence so close she could nearly feel his breath. "What will it take? Your daughter or your sanity?" Tears streamed down Sarah's face. "Neither." She howled, clenching her fists. The doubt began to fade with the heat of her resolve. She took a deep, shuddering breath and honed in on Emma's trembling figure. "Emma, find my voice," she called, her voice pure and strong. "Listen to me. Focus on me. I'm here for you." With each word, the darkness flickered, hesitating, as if caught off guard by Sarah's unyielding love. She could almost feel the connection snapping back into place. "Mommy," Emma murmured again, this time her eyes filled with recognition, the fog slowly retreating. Sarah felt a surge of warmth, a flicker of hope igniting against the encroaching cold. But Jennings' laughter rose into a cacophony, enraged and furious. "No! This is mine. You cannot take what is mine." He lunged at Sarah, a dark wave of energy surging forth, shadows swirling in a tempest around him. Sarah's resolve wavered, trembling at the sight of the dark force barreling toward her like a freight train. "Emma! Believe in us!" she shouted, bracing herself as the shadows approached like a tidal wave. Everything began to blur, darkness closing in on all sides, pulling her heart pounding, every fiber of her being urging her to turn back. But she was not ready to lose what mattered most. "Hold on. I'm coming. We'll find our way together." The shadows screamed their anger, but it fell upon her like background noise. Still, as they crashed toward her, she felt the ground beneath her shifting, trembling in uncertainty. But then, as if a spark ignited from deep within Sarah, she pushed back against the darkness. Could love overpower despair? The shadows faltered for just a brief moment, hesitating, and in that split second, Sarah moved, her feet finally carving a path toward Emma. And then a blinding flash of light erupted around her. What would emerge from that chaos? Would they break free, or was it too late? The brightness enveloped Sarah like a warm embrace, momentarily bathing her in radiance amidst the chaos. Her breath caught in her throat as she reached for Emma, desperation clawing anew at her heart. But the light twisted, warping in front of her eyes as Jennings howled, "You think you can escape? You think you can save her?" The warmth of the light began to flicker. The shadows writhed, reaching out like hungry hands, thrashing against the protective barrier that surrounded them both. Sarah blinked hard, feeling her resolve falter just as the light began to dim. Could this truly be their salvation? "Mommy!" Emma cried, her voice quaking. The fear returned, more vivid than before, snaking through the air like smoke from a dying fire. "I'm here, Emma!" Sarah shouted, her throat raw. "Stay with me. I want to let them have you." An eerie silence descended, leaving only a tense pause filled with shadowy whispers, drowned-out cries, and the threatening presence of Jennings. It hung heavy, swirling around her like impending doom. And then it broke. The blinding light shattered, bursting like glass, and everything went dark. Sarah's heart raced, panic tightening its grip. The shadows surged violently around them, and Sarah felt herself pulled, ripped away from Emma, as if the night itself contained malicious intent. "Mommy!" Emma wailed, tears echoing through the void. Each sob sent daggers of despair into Sarah's heart. "No!" she screamed, scrambling forward, reaching blindly for Emma's hand. The two were caught in the throes of a cruel play, the darkness trying to rip them apart with every tick of time. Jennings' laughter bounced mockingly through the inky black. "She belongs to me now. Her spirit has been marked, Sarah. You can't save someone who's already lost." "Shut up!" she shouted into the dark, fueled by an instinctual rage. As if sensing her defiance, the shadows recoiled, swirling back for a heartbeat, leaving Sarah breathless. In that clearing, she caught a glimpse of Emma, still flickering in the alien fog, a beacon struggling to break through just like her mother. "Emma, focus on my voice. Reach for me," Sarah urged, heart racing. Then, she saw it a glimmer, a thin thread of light stretching from Emma to her, tenuous but alive. With renewed strength, Sarah pushed through the disorienting void, straight toward her daughter, but Jennings howled angrily, "Stop. You will pay the price. The bond you share will cost you everything." A surge of raw energy burst forth, slamming into Sarah like a wall of bricks. She fell backward, grabbing her head where electric pain flared, blinding her. The sharpness of despair grew as sharp as any knife, whispering corrosive doubts. "I can't," she breathed. "I can't leave her." Fighting through waves of torment, Sarah clawed herself upright, instinct overpowering pain. She wouldn't let despair consume her. She wouldn't succumb to Jennings' bitter game. "Emma, I'm coming," she called again, heart pounding like a drum in her chest. And with those words, the darkness tightened, moving with purpose, trying to crush the fragile thread they shared. The shadows buzzed, a cacophony of malicious laughter spiraling around them, but then, the light flared again, brighter, more comprehensive, illuminating the swirling chaos. Sarah felt a swell of courage, a tremendous wave of willpower blooming within. Could the love of a mother truly pierce the veil of darkness? With one final, determined push, she dove toward Emma, reaching for the flicker that connected them, clinging to the hope that love would cast aside shadows. But just as fingers brushed, the world splintered into a dizzying whirl, shadows curling with rage, laughs echoing in her ears, and coldness that constricted around her throat until she could barely breathe. The last thing she felt was Emma's warmth slipping away into the abyss. What would happen next? Did love stand a chance against the encroaching dark? Would they both plummet into oblivion, or could a single act of bravery change their fates forever? Sarah felt weightless, as if she were suspended in a void that pulsed with dark energy. The cacophony of laughter twisted around her, each giggle a dagger digging deeper into her soul. The tendrils of shadow clawed at her, whispering fear and despair in a language she always understood. Where was Emma? Panic surged anew, icy fingers coiling around her heart. She was alone, lost in the suffocating darkness. Taking a breath, sharp and shallow, Sarah grasped at the remnants of her courage. Emma! She screamed again, but her voice slipped away, swallowed by the murk that hung like a heavy fog, muting her cries. Jennings' laughter rang out, echoing like thunderclaps in the empty space. Is this what you want to see? Your precious child, tainted and twisted, forever bound to the dark. The words slashed at Sarah, igniting a blaze of anger within her. No! You're lying! She hissed, defiance bubbling hot in her chest. She fought against the binds of despair with every ounce of her energy. But the darkness pressed down on her, heavier than any weight she had ever known. Suddenly, a flicker caught her eye, a tiny spark glowing in the distance, flickering like a candle. Emma! Sarah stumbled forward, driven by desperation. She called out again, her voice sharper now, filled with a mother's determination. I'm coming. Hold on, sweetheart. As she moved closer, the shadows protested, swirling around her, trying to ensnare her in their grasp. Each step felt like wading through thick sludge that threatened to drag her down. The cacophony of Jennings' laughter mixed with Emma's cries, a haunting melody that danced around her, taunting her resolve. No! Sarah shouted, shaking her head as if to clear her mind. With a sudden burst of clarity, an idea sparked in her. She remembered the stories her grandmother told about the power of love and belief. The strength to conquer even the darkest night. Emma! You need to see me. Focus on my voice, my love. Each word felt like a pulse, echoing amidst the shadows, creating ripples that pushed against the darkness. The flicker grew larger and more tangible. Sarah could almost see Emma now, skin illuminated like a silver lining against the encroaching dark. Hope cascaded through her, a tidal wave crashing down upon the despair threatening to drown her. Keep focusing. Just keep holding on. But then Jennings roared, You dare challenge me? You will lose everything, Sarah. Your soul will become a trophy of this night. The darkness congealed around her, pressing in painfully. Sarah gasped, choking on a wave of pure dread. It was true, everything she had fought for seemed perilously close to slipping away. No! She wouldn't allow it. The thought of Emma, bright and full of life, was all the fuel she needed. She forced herself forward, her body a vessel of pure will. As she broke through the last layer of shadow, she grasped Emma's hand, the sensation shooting through her like a jolt of electricity. Suddenly, the laughter stopped. The shadows recoiled, shattering under the intensity of their bond. They were together, heartbeats racing in synchrony, warmth spreading through the chill. Mommy! Emma cried, her voice like a lifeline. But even in that moment of connection, the void whispered promises of despair. You think this victory is yours? Oh, my dear Sarah, you have only begun to pay. And with that, a chilling wind howled through the darkness, bending the shadows into wild shapes, plunging the world back into chaos and pleasure. Twisted in Jennings' laughter thrummed in the air like a funeral dirge. As the shadows lunged at them both, Sarah could feel the weight of the truth bearing down upon them. What price would they have to pay for this moment of connection? Determined, she gathered her strength, ready to face whatever awaited them, but before she could act, the ground beneath them began to tremble. A voice, deeper and darker than Jennings, boomed from the abyss, Let the true game begin. The shadows twitched and surged, readying for the next horrifying chapter. What new horrors awaited them as they stepped further into the abyss? The ground shuddered beneath Sarah and Emma, a pulse echoing through the darkness like a heartbeat's death knell. The warmth of their connection flickered, leaving them grasping at fading embers. Shadows coiled tighter, their edges sharp and biting, a relentless grip that threatened to pull them apart again. Mommy, I can't hold on. Emma's voice broke, mingling fear with desperation. Cold dread washed over Sarah like a wave, but she pushed it back. Don't let go. Focus on me, sweetheart, Sarah urged, tightening her grip. She could see the outline of Emma's face now pale and frightened, but still her daughter. The bond between them pulsed, a fragile light in the consuming dark. Suddenly, a figure materialized from the shadows. Jennings stepped forward, eyes glinting with a predatory gleam. Ah, how sweet. The strength of love, but it won't save you here. Each word dripped with malice, a taunt that echoed against the dense air. Sarah felt the heat of panic rise within her, fighting against the shadows clutching at her limbs. You're wrong. We will get out of here. The space twisted, contorting around them, distorting the landscape they once recognized. Reality bent under the weight of darkness, as the chilling wind swirled closer. Time hung suspended, seconds stretched into an eternity filled with dread. A sinister giggle erupted from the void, laced with Jennings' contempt. You see, Sarah? It's not just you I'm playing with, it's everyone who believes in you. The echoes of laughter surged and multiplied, sharp and piercing, enough to crack Sarah's resolve. Her heart raced, each beat vibrating with the unshakable fear of losing everything. And then she felt it, a tug at her heart, a pull toward an unseen danger. Something was coming. Not just the shadows. Mommy! Emma's scream broke through the warped sounds, urgent and panicked. Look out! Sarah followed her daughter's gaze, just as a massive shadow lunged forward, dark and shapeless. It swallowed the air around them. Time seemed to funnel into this singular moment as Sarah flung herself protectively around Emma, preparing for impact, but the blow never came. Instead, a screech pierced the air, an otherworldly wail that sent shudders through the veil of darkness. The shadows retreated, twisting back into the depths as if repelled by an unseen force. In the aftermath, silence dominated, oppressive and thick. Only their ragged breaths broke the stillness. Sarah, clutching Emma, could feel her heartbeat steadying even though the danger hadn't passed. What was that? Emma whispered, her eyes wide with terror. I don't know, honey, Sarah confessed. But deep inside, a gnawing unease began to take root. Something powerful had intervened. But it did not feel like salvation. The absence of the darkness brought a different kind of fear, one that hinted at greater horrors still hidden behind the veil, and suddenly, from the shadows, a new realization crashed over Sarah. Are we still part of the game? She whispered, dread curling into her gut. The trembling earth began to pulse again, synchronized with a low growl vibrating through the air. Their eyes darted around, searching for movement, for an escape, but there was nothing. Only the oppressive, dark silence that seemed to pulse with malice. Mommy! Emma's voice shook, tiny hands gripping Sarah tighter. A shiver snaked down Sarah's spine as she felt it, an overwhelming presence bearing down from all sides. Stay close to me, she urged. But a thought prickled at the edges of her mind. What if it wasn't Jennings they needed to fear? That thought lingered, a weighty truth swimming just beneath the surface. As the ground trembled once more, that presence drew closer. Sarah realized, in sickening clarity, the true game had only just begun. What was lurking within the darkness, waiting, ready to reveal itself? The air around them thickened, almost tangible, as if it had turned to syrup. The weight of anticipation pressed on Sarah's chest, each heartbeat deafening in the stillness. She dared not break her gaze from where the shadows retreating began to swirl again, forming shapes that danced just out of view. Each shift made her stomach churn, a twisted knot of anxiety tightening. Mommy, it hurts, Emma whimpered, the grip on her mother's wrist tightening with each pulse of the dark. Sarah felt her daughter's fear filter through her like icy water, freezing every instinct to flee. Emma, listen to me. Sarah urged, forcing herself to sound strong, even as her voice quivered. Look at me. Don't look at the shadows, okay? Just focus on my voice. But in the depths of her mind, a darker thought echoed. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It felt like they were part of a sickening game, with rules crafted by Jennings. It had to be. An icy realization settled in. He was feeding off their fear, drawing strength from their terror. Suddenly, the shadows pulsed dangerously, and Sarah grabbed her daughter harder, the movement almost frantic. The floor beneath them cracked, splintering like dry wood, revealing a dark void that murmured softly a whispered invitation. "Do you feel that?" Emma asked, her small voice trembling. Fear radiated from her, compass-like in its directional pull. "I do, baby. We need to keep moving." Sarah's heart raced, and she scanned the dimly lit space beyond the shadows. Was there a way out? Or was it just another trap? The darkness seemed to breathe, alive, aware, and eager for their despair. An angry growl erupted from the depths, low and primal. The shadows shivered, then lunged forward, snapping into sharp edges, liquid darkness chasing them. "Run!" Sarah yelled, pulling Emma closer as they dashed toward an indistinct light flickering in the distance. The sound of their pounding footsteps mingled with the heavy breath of the shadows pursuing them, a persistent, hungry predator closing in. "What is it?" Emma screamed, panic rising in her eyes as they wove through the shadowy landscape. "I don't know. Just keep going," Sarah urged, forcing herself forward even as every instinct screamed to turn and face whatever was hunting them. The light drew nearer, a flickering promise, but something gnawed at her soul. What awaited them in the light? As they sprinted, the ground beneath them erupted, gaping holes opening. They stumbled, barely managing to keep their footing. Sarah could hear Jennings' laughter echoing, taunting from the darkness, and a shudder of dread coursed through her veins. It was all his doing, the shadows, the gaps, the terrifying proximity of an unseen force. "Faster! We can't stop!" Sarah yelled, urging Emma on, her voice breaking as she forced herself not to glance back. A primal scream ripped through the air, and she felt it, a rush of cold air piercing her heart, almost as if death itself reached for her. They reached the edge of light, breathing heavily, and Sarah halted, panting as she scanned the edge of the illumination. It flickered like a faulty bulb, illuminating just enough to show another world behind it, further obscuring what lay beyond. "Mommy, what if it's worse?" Emma's voice was small, trembling with raw fear. The shadows flickered beyond with renewed vigor, and Sarah hesitated. A chilling laugh erupted from Jennings again, this time layered with twisted anticipation. "Just one more step, Sarah, it'll be so much fun." Sarah held Emma closely, her mind racing. Was this the choice they had to make? Step into the light or stay in the darkness? She felt the balance shift dangerously, the shadows closing in, threatening to swallow them if they didn't act quickly. Are we really free if we go toward the light? That thought hung heavy in the air, stark against the darkness surrounding them. And in that moment of suffocating indecision, Sarah knew they had to make a choice, or lose everything they held dear. Where would the light lead them? What awaited them on the other side? With a deep breath, Sarah locked eyes with Emma, her heart racing as she took in her daughter's terrified face. "We have to believe," she said firmly, channeling all her love and courage. "We can't let him win. I refuse to let him take us." The flickering light beyond pulsed as if responding to Sarah's words. In the shadows, Jennings' laughter echoed, a sickening reminder of the threat circling them. "What will it be, Sarah? Join the light and face the unknown, or stay in safety within my darkness?" His voice slithered through the air, smooth and taunting, igniting fear deep within her. What if the light holds its own dangers? Emma's voice trembled, the doubt inching into her tone. What if it's a trap? Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand tighter, grounding them both. "We'll never know if we don't try. The darkness feeds on our fears. But together, we're strong enough to break free." Sarah's resolve fortified her, and a spark ignited in her heart, dispelling the gathering dread. "Mommy!" Emma whimpered, her small voice cutting through the thick tension. "I trust you. Then trust in us." With a roar, Sarah pushed Emma ahead, urging her forward as they approached the light's edge. Shadows lashed out around them, gnashing and twisting in fury as they met the light's boundaries. For a moment, everything felt suspended, a breath caught in the air between choices. The moment felt surreal, as if time had slowed. Then, Sarah charged forward, pulling Emma with her. "Hold on tight," she shouted. The brightness enveloped them like a warm embrace, the shadows shrieking in outrage behind them. They stumbled into the light, and it cascaded over them, washing away the oppressive chill, peeling back layers of fear and uncertainty. As they emerged, Sarah felt a wave of relief shatter the fog of despair holding her captive. But a sudden jolt of darkness surged after them, no longer the jabs of cold shadows but something deeper, an insistent grasp pulling them back, filling the space with a resounding echo of Jennings' final bark, "You can't escape me. Mom. Don't let go." Emma screeched, her eyes wide with terror as they surged into the light together. "I won T. We're stronger than this." Sarah screamed back, frantically wrapping her arms around Emma. In that shared moment of truth, something miraculous flickered to life in the light, a presence that buoyed their spirits, keeping them afloat as they fought against the rushing tide pulling them under. In a blinding flash, shadows writhed in fury, exploding into mist. As Sarah and Emma pressed forward, the chaotic landscape twisted and morphed, shadows now sparking with color-defined shapes of memories and long-lost dreams, flickering like embers on a dew-rich mist. "Mom?" Emma whispered, her eyes glancing back as she felt the grip of the dark growing distant. "Is it really over?" Not yet. Sarah felt the echo of Jennings' presence still lingering, but it was fading. The shadows could no longer hold them, shriveling in the wake of their determination. As they raced forward, light poured from every direction, wrapping around them like a blanket. The darkness receded, an afterimage of anguish rather than the encompassing panic it had once held. And finally, with roaring energy, the bonds shattered. "What's happening?" Emma cried, looking up at Sarah with awe as a new world began to reveal itself. "Whatever we want it to be," Sarah replied, her voice steady, igniting their connection. She bravely stepped into the space beyond, a vibrant reality alive with color and warmth, the sound of laughter ringing like music. They emerged into a vast field blooming with wildflowers and sunlight streaming down like golden ribbons. It felt like a place untouched by darkness, a sanctuary crafted by the power of love. The remnants of fear faded, and Sarah turned to Emma, their connection strengthening, guiding them to take another bold step, no longer trapped but set free. "Oh, Mommy! Look!" Emma exclaimed. Before them was an endless horizon, a canvas of possibilities stretching wide and wild. "We made it." Tears streamed down Sarah's face, but this time they were not from fear, they were from a deep well of joy and relief. Together, they stood tall in their new transformed world where love persisted, and they could finally breathe without dread. And as the echoes of Jennings' taunts faded into the distance, their hearts beat in unison, each pulse whispering a promise. Together, always. With every step forward, they cherished the lesson they learned. Their bond was unbreakable, forged in the fires of darkness but destined for light. Sarah took one last look back into the shadows, a weight slipping off her shoulders. They were free. Such was the power of unwavering love, a force strong enough to pierce even the thickest darkness. Now, it's your turn. If you were moved by this story, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss our next exclusive tales. Smash that like button now, show your love to feed the algorithm and help us reach more fans just like you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the twists and turns in this thrilling journey. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion. Your support means everything to us, it fuels our passion.